It has been 6 months and 30 days, 211 days. I was really interested to know actually how many days exactly has it been since the inception of retreat, and that's what it is. And I was quite shocked, to be honest with you, that it's been 211 days. But I've enjoyed it. I know that many of you have enjoyed it. Some of you haven't enjoyed it, and I apologize. But we know that God is doing incredible things behind the scenes and incredible things in front in this season, and He's going to continue. But I want to give you a little bit of a recap before we launch into our message this morning. I want to give you a little bit of a recap of the last season. Now, I read this quote the other day. And this quote, and it's an anonymous quote. I don't know who actually said it, but I read it. And it said this. It says, "For many people, retreat is actually more difficult than action. When we're doing something, it's easier to forget our troubles. When in retreat, we have no choice but to look ourselves straight in the eye." And that's really what the season's been about on lots of levels. Let me flip it to on a spiritual note. You know, when we pull back from something or we seize action on something, it gives us a new perspective or a fresh perspective of the thing that we used to do. And so sometimes you got to put things aside or pull back so you could see clearly. You guys know what I'm saying? And it's easy just to go through the motions. I mean, how many like going through the motions? I don't think many do, or maybe you do, because, you know, going through the motions of life, it's very easy to not address problems or to just, you know, not really see what you could be doing better because you just want to keep the wheel moving. And so you keep putting oil, you keep putting, you know, lubrication in the wheel, you keep doing what you're doing just to keep it moving, but sometimes you got to stop it so you could assess the whole bike. You guys know what I'm saying? And so it's good to retreat. It's a pulling back season. One of the origins of that word, really, it means this, to pull back. That's what it means. The word retreat means to pull back. It's like an arrow. When you pull back an arrow, you gotta, before you launch it out, you have to pull it back. And as you pull it back, you gain strength. You give the arrow, you give that launch strength because you're pulling it back. And I feel like that's what's been happening is God's been strengthening the house here. How many feel strength in the last season? How many feel like you've been getting stronger in the last season? Well, that's been the goal of retreat. And for all of us in our own way, we all have been on our own little retreat, and that's what happens on retreat. You get stronger, and that's, I believe, why God wanted us to go away in the last few days. Michelle and I, it's been really strengthening for our marriage. Psalm 71, verse 1-3, out of the Message, says, "I run for dear life to God. I'll never live to regret it. Do what you do so well. Get me out of this mess and up on my feet. Put your ear to the ground and listen. Give me space for salvation. Be a guest room where I can retreat. You said your door was always open." I love that. Be a guest room where I can retreat. God is our permanent place of retreat. Maybe we don't have a retreat in the natural. Maybe we don't have a vacation. Maybe we don't have a time where we can just stop all the things that we're doing, stop all the actions, but we know that we have a permanent place of retreat, and it's in relationship with Jesus. That's where we find our retreat. That's where we find our greatest strength is in God. And for us as a ministry, as a church, you know, this whole season wasn't about putting things on hold. It wasn't about putting things on pause. Although you do those things, it was more about getting a good and right perspective for the future. That's what it's more about. It's not about, okay, this thing's being put on pause or this thing's being put aside for a season or we're not going to do this for a season. No, it's more about getting a perspective on what God wants to do for the future. And so sometimes you got to pull back and isolate or disconnect yourself from a few things so you can have a right kind of perspective and a right vantage point. We've been on a journey of retreat, and we've been able to refocus our attention, simplify, and no, we've not done everything perfect, and no, we don't have a full picture in every single detail. Every piece of the puzzle's not in place yet, but we're on a journey. And we're continuing to be on that journey. And one thing I love about God is that, with God, you're constantly trying to grab a hold of what he's saying and what he's doing. And so you never have every piece of the puzzle right away. If you did, then you would have ended your life. If you had everything in a row, everything perfect, everything, you saw everything, you knew everything, you had all knowledge, you had all revelation about what God wanted to do in and through your life, and you had all the right pieces, well, then you could put them together and you could have a perfect life. But the reality of it is that we are on this never-ending journey with the Lord where he's constantly adding and he's removing and he's shifting and he's causing us to see his plan unfold in a process that sometimes may not be totally clear. Are you with me this morning? I love it what it says in Psalms 27 verse 5. His house is my shelter and secret retreat. It is there I find peace in the midst of the storm and turmoil. And I think as a house, we've been in this place of retreat. And I know for many people, the messages and the things that we've been talking about and addressing over the last 6 months have been a help, have been counsel, have been strength for people in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of storms in their own life. But going into retreat, we never know what's going to take place. Like when you pull an arrow back, you never quite know, unless you're a master, at shooting arrows, you never quite really know where the arrow is going to land. If you pull back the arrow and you shoot it up into the sky, you most likely do not know where it's going to land. And it's kind of like that with retreat. The purpose is to relaunch out and to shoot that arrow out, but you don't always know where it's going to land. And so you're pulling back by faith and you're letting go by faith. But before we walk into this message this morning, I want to give you quickly a recap of the last 30 weeks. Ready for this? You guys can take notes. See how fast you are. If you have an iPad or a BlackBerry or whatever iPhone, I encourage you to take notes. You don't have to write all this stuff down. It will be on the screen for you. But number one, the first week we talked about relinquish. And relinquishing our life to God, submitting our life to God, giving our life to God. That word relinquish meant to give with intense force. To give with intense force, voluntarily, to give up. And it was all about walking with the Spirit in every aspect of life. And so we launched this whole series, September 15th, 2013, with a message called Relinquish, about submitting the season to God. That's number one. Number two, the second week, rewind, going back to the beginning, how sometimes you got to go backwards to go forwards, which really was the whole message of retreat. Pulling ourselves back so we can propel ourselves forward. Number three, repent. Understanding that we need to have God's penthouse perspective. That when we repent, really we're going back to the word means to go back to his penthouse, high place, and see from his high place of sight, to see from his vantage point. Number four, recover. They healed spirit, soul, and body. And it was all about the gospel and what Jesus came to do, to heal us spirit, soul, and body. Number five, reminders. That was on Thanksgiving Sunday, and how God's constantly trying to remind us to be thankful for what we have, to be thankful in every area, and to be content. Number six, reevaluate. That was all about the search for balance, and how as long as we're on the quest for balance in life, we're in balance. Did you hear that? As long as we're on the quest for balance, we're in balance, because you'll never quite feel like you are in perfect balance, because life's always throwing you new obstacles, new opportunities, new doors open, new things, new responsibilities. You quite never, as soon as you feel like you're in balance, something new happens. Maybe you get sick, or maybe one of your children gets sick, or maybe you something happens at your job and you have to readjust, and there's new responsibilities now because somebody left, your coworker, and now you have all this new pressure on you to do their job, their tasks. And as soon as you felt like in your job you found that place of balance, something new was added to you. So as long as we're in the search for balance, we are in balance. Number seven, refocus. Do you see what I see? Sometimes we have to refocus. When we look at a situation, we look at it from God's perspective, but sometimes what we see is not what God sees. And we have to refocus our attention to see what he sees. Number 8, reawaken. Remember the message, perseverance what? Remember that. All about persevering. And are you persevering or are you giving up? Number 9, rewarded. Walk the talk. How there's a reward when we walk the talk. We don't just talk the walk, but we actually walk the talk. We live out the things that we believe, and we say we believe in faith. Number 10, repossess, and how we constantly are on this journey of taking hold of the things of the kingdom that he's promised to us. Number 11, reaffirm. Walking in the spirit of encouragement. That's something that we need to apply every day to our life, and encouraging those around us, encouraging our atmosphere to grow and get stronger. Number 12, re-strategize. Expecting big, bigger, and even bigger, and how God will take us back sometimes to give us a new strategy so that we can expect not just big, not just bigger, but even bigger things, and that's the heart of God. Number 13, realize. 2 wells and a life-changing prayer, talking about how in the Christmas season, there are 2 wells that we can draw from, the well of discouragement and the well of encouragement. And you can go and you watch that message online as well. Number 14, reveal. The greatest gift of the season. Obviously talking about Jesus being born at Christmas time. Number 15, release, the never-ending journey of us constantly releasing everything that we have and everything that we are in the season of life that we're in. That's a never-ending journey. Number 16, rewrap, presenting our best every day. Every day it's God's desire that we present our best to him, and we not only just give what we have, but we make sure we're giving our best. We rewrap. Number 17, rearrange, setting the house in order. That was I believe the beginning of our 2014 season. Rearrange, setting the house in order, getting things right and set up for a new year. Number 19, refresh. Supernatural all the way, and how God wants to refresh us and remind us that it's all about his kingdom. It's not just about, practical parts of life and surviving through life. It's about his kingdom being released in every area of life. Supernatural all the way. Number 20, re-identified. No more fake ID, and how the world defines us with a false identification, and how God wants to remind us that we have been re-identified with Christ and we can live from that vantage point. Number 21, reconnect. We are better together, as Joe mentioned. Number 22, realign. The road to spiritual alignment, talking about Ruth, the story of Ruth, and what she did to realign herself with destiny through aligning herself with the right people. Number 23, rename. Understanding what breaks and makes us, and how, a name defines our journey. A name defines our success, or determines where we're going to end up in life. Number 24, rematch, trust and fight, and how the enemy throws us punches from all angles all the time, and how we need to get up and offer him a rematch, trust and fight. Number 25, reassure. The power to overcome obstacles in everyday life, and how God wants to reassure us that he's given us what we need to overcome. Number 26, resurface vision and the voices. We had a guest speaker for that, Josh Kimes from Hillsong, New York. Surface vision and the voices. Number 27, reproduce. What are you looking at? And how we talked about how we reproduce in our lives what we most look at in life. What we most focus on in life, we empower to be reproduced and multiplied through our life. Number 28, replant. Rediscovering the realities of transition. Powerful message. You need to watch that. Number 29, recommit. The commitment that never stops committing, and how every day we're constantly recommitting ourselves to the commitment that we made with Jesus that one time. Number 30, relook. It's not hard as it seems. You heard Pastor Joe last week talk about that. I know it was very good. And this week, wow, that's a lot of weeks. This week, number 31. Everyone say week 31. Our series finale is Relaunch. Relaunch, remembering the purpose of retreat. Father, help us. Father, I thank you that this is a good season, and we continue to trust you. And God, we know that you're relaunching us, that you're taking us from this place of retreat, and you're relaunching us into an exciting season. And God, we thank you that you're going to do things that are going to blow our minds, that you're going to do things that are going to surprise us, that you're going to go above and beyond our expectation. In Jesus' name, amen. So relaunch, what does that mean? It means to cause to start again with renewed vigor after a period of inactivity. To start again with renewed vigor after a period of inactivity. In the end, the purpose of retreat is to relaunch. And even though you may not have a definition in your own life of maybe what you're relaunching, maybe you're in a season where you're coming out of, it's like we're coming out of the hibernation of winter. We've retreated in winter. I mean, as a culture, it's like we're in retreat during wintertime, aren't we? We get home from work, we open our garage doors and we close our garage doors and we go in and we don't see people on our street because it's freezing, frostbite warnings in effect, and we just don't talk to people when it's really, really cold outside often. And so it's like we're in this retreating season during the wintertime as a culture. It's like we're used to it. We're used to the isolation that comes with cold. How many like the cold? I mean, nobody, a few of you. Wow, a few of you. You're the reason why it's cold. You guys stop liking the cold. And, but we're, the purpose of, I believe one of the great things about spring is that we relaunch everything. I mean, we do spring cleaning. I mean, everything changes. We get excited. It's like, the snow melts. We get to kind of relaunch our landscaping. We get to, clean up our yard. We get to clean up our garage, put our patio furniture out. We kind of like, it's kind of like a relaunching season when seasons change. How many know what I'm talking about? And it's exciting. But we don't always know what that season is going to bring. We don't always know, and we don't always know in detail what relaunching really looks like for us. We just feel it. We know it. Seasons are changing. We're getting ourselves ready. We're rearranging a few things. We're setting, our everything outside in order, because now we'll be able to hang out outside and I'll have a new, fun, exciting season where we're not hibernating inside anymore. And that's what it was like for Michelle and I when we were in Mexico this last week. It was amazing. Before we left, it said on the Weather Channel every day it was going to rain. And let me just tell you, it didn't rain once except for a few hours. The whole time we were there, it was awesome and hot, and yet it had an amazing breeze, and just where we were at, it was just incredible. The food, how many like Mexican food? Man, I love Mexican food. I love it. 10 days of Mexican food, and then it's like the day you get back, it's like your body knows, okay, you just had Mexican food for 10 days. Now it's time to clean house. Anyways, sorry for the picture. Spring cleaning, yeah. One of the things, I didn't say that, Joe said that. One of the things that we're relaunching, like I said, in this season is a mindset. I mean, as a people, as a church body here, is a mindset, And one of those, one of the things that I could say confidently is that we want to launch into the season with a mindset that church is not about us. We come into the kingdom, we come into a relationship with Jesus for the first time, and now all of a sudden there is a mandate on our life. And that mandate is to help others around us, to help everyone everywhere around you experience God for the first time just like you. And so as a church, how does that apply? Well, it's so easy in a church culture, especially a more charismatic culture, to come to church and think, wow, it's all about what I can get when I come to church. What I can feel during the worship, and what I can receive during the message, and how I can feel empowered and how I can feel encouraged when I go home. Now, all of that happens. But I don't believe that's God's heart for you to have in your mindset. Because then it becomes all about you, and that's why it's very easy for those that can be critical in church. When it's all about them, it's very easy for them to say what they don't like that's affecting them. I don't like the music, I don't like the preaching, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like the stage, we get so critical because it's really all about us. We're looking at how it affects us, what bothers us, but really it's about, hey, how can I facilitate an encounter for somebody else? How can I facilitate the same way that God brought me in to an experience with him? Now, wait a minute. It's not about me. I'm in. I'm in this. I'm in a relationship with Jesus. I know where I'm going when I die, and I want everybody else around me to have the same experience. That's one of the mindsets that we're relaunching into in this next season. That's why Easter, we're giving you an opportunity. Bring everybody that you can find next week. Bring your friends, bring your coworkers, bring the relationships that you have, bring your employees, bring your neighbors, bring anybody, your family. Find people to bring to the services. Let's facilitate an environment where they can have an experience of God for the first time. Are you with me? That's one of the things that we're relaunching into. It's a new mindset. It's no longer about me, but about those that have yet to experience the same thing that I have experienced. Relaunching really is about trusting God with what we're relaunching into, even if we don't have articulated language to understand fully what that looks like. Now, I want to talk really quickly today using the story of Noah. And interestingly enough, all of you probably are aware that there's a movie that's come out called Noah. In fact, there are 2 movies that have come out, a YouTube version of Noah by somebody in the evangelical world, and then we have a Hollywood version of Noah. And they came out on the same day, spite of each other. And how many have seen the movie? A few of you. Now, I'm not going to go preach my theology on the movie. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. But I enjoyed it. I'm just going to say it. I enjoyed it. Why? Because the fact that Hollywood is making movies of the stories that we believe in, even if they're not totally accurate, is enough to start a conversation with somebody. And that's all that matters. So I'm just impressed that Hollywood's picking it up. Yeah, and it may be, whether it's right motive or wrong motive, to me is irrelevant. Hollywood is picking it up. And people are going to start asking questions and more questions about, well, maybe it wasn't totally theologically accurate, but that was never the point. Now, in an ideal world, we'd all love it to be perfectly accurate and satisfy our desires based upon what we know to be true. But the reality of it is, we live in a world does a lot of things that are inaccurate. Nothing's ever going to be, even from church to church, people have, different spins on different things. And there's whole chasms even in the church world called denominations with big doctrinal differences. And one says they're not accurate, the other says they're not. You know what? In the end, if the gospel's being preached, if a door opens up because of a movie that comes out, hey, I'm for it. I'm for it. Even if it's The Exorcist. No, I'm just joking. Okay. So there was a man named Noah. It's funny, actually. I've had lots of conversations because people have asked, well, is that real? And I'm like, yeah, of course it's real. I've seen it. I've experienced it. It happens. Talking about like exorcism and stuff. And it's very interesting. The conversations that happen really tell me about it. And it's an open door. And I've even seen deliverance happen because of a conversation that was sparked by that movie, The Exorcist. Anyways. There was a man named Noah, 10 generations after Adam. Very significant. Numbers are very significant in the Bible. 10 generations after Adam. Noah's name means rest and or comfort. Remember this, okay? Rest and or comfort. So Adam, first man, makes a big mistake. Sin enters the world. 10 generations later, God decides to establish something in the earth that would wipe out the entire planet so he could restart again. The number 10, scripturally speaking, means, or in biblical numerology, one of the definitions that the number 10 actually means could be noted as divine order. Write that down on your notes. Divine order. The number 10 means divine order, something, like number 10 commandments, divine order. Okay, so Noah comes 10 generations after Adam to set things into a new order. And he comes identified as rest and comfort. Interesting. Because he's going to be the very thing or the very person that is the catalyst to launch the most chaotic disorder since the beginning of time when the earth was void. So number one, I want to give you 4 key points today to remind us of the purpose of retreat. And I know there are many things that we could be reminded of as far as the purposes of retreat, but I want to give you 4. Number one, remembering the purpose of building trust. Remembering the purpose of building trust. Noah knew nothing. Noah knew nothing. Write that down in your notes. Noah knew nothing. And I think that's why God was excited, not just because he was blameless and he was righteous. Yes, that is absolutely true. But I believe Noah knew nothing. And God chooses the foolish things of man to shame the wise. He takes the nobodies of the world and says, I can use you. You may not have education. You may not be the smartest brick on the wall. You may be the cracked brick on the wall. You may be the detached brick from the mortar. You may be the brick that's not even on the wall. You're on the sidelines. And God says, you know what? I could do something amazing with you. And so Noah, a pretty simple man, was picked to build something that he had never heard of before. He had no paradigm for. He had no grid for. He was called to build a large boat. And it wasn't going to sink. Genesis 6, verse 14. It says, this is God speaking to Noah. Build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar inside and out. Then construct decks and stalls throughout its interior. Now, God gives him this elaborate plan. Now, I don't even think at this point Noah is fully aware of what's going to actually take place. You know, we get a word from God, move to Africa, or we get a word from God, move to Orleans, because the East End's better, or whatever. We get a word from God, and we don't know what that move is going to look like. We don't know what that, listening to God's plan is going to end like. We don't know the reward of it. We don't really fully grasp it. So God says to Noah, blameless man, doesn't know anything about anything to do with building an ark, and says, hey man, build me a large boat. Build me a large boat. And I'm going to give you the plans to build it because something's coming. There's a flood coming. And I'm going to wipe away all the sin and the wickedness off the face of the earth, and I'm going to start over again. It's going to be a new creation, okay? Remember this, a new creation. I'm going to start over again, start fresh. It says, then construct decks and stalls throughout the interior, verse 15. Make the boat 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Leave an 18-inch opening below the roof all the way around the boat. Put the door on the side and build 3 decks inside the boat. Lower, middle, and upper. Look, I am about to cover the earth with a flood that will destroy everything, every living thing that breathes. Everything on earth will die. But I will confirm my covenant with you. So enter the boat, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. And so you have this command, this mandate that comes from heaven to this man who has no grid of what a boat is and no grid of what a flood is. Imagine that. God says to you, I want you to start a business. You don't know what a business is. What's a business? Well, business is this. And you just have to begin to trust God. And, well, what's the business? And God begins to give you the business idea. And then he said, well, how do I go about this? And God begins to give you the blueprint on how to go about it. And God gives you every step. It takes tremendous trust when even Noah has nobody else to be a voice of counsel or support into the situation. Well, this is how you do it. I built arks a long time ago. Nobody was doing that. Nobody had built an ark before, a boat before. So Noah was kind of all alone in this, but had a connection with God that gave him the blueprint. Ask yourself this question. Have you done something that you knew you were supposed to do and had no experience in? Many of you had. Maybe God wanted you to change your oil, and you've never changed your oil before. And so you had to figure it out on your own. Maybe God wanted you to fix this or fix, maybe God asked Joe to fix a light bulb, and he didn't know how to fix the light bulb. He didn't know which way to screw it in, and so he was trying to go left, and he realized he's like, I go right, and then he learned by doing. How many have done stuff before they've never done before, but knew they were to do it? Whether God told you or not is irrelevant. Your boss told you. It's happened to me. I remember when I was back in the landscape and construction days of my life, I remember my boss telling me to do certain things that I really had no idea how to do, but I just kind of stepped out and I made mistakes as I went, but I did it. And I figured it out. We have to trust. We have to trust. I remember this was kind of my experience when we launched into full-time ministry. In 2004, I started traveling by myself around the world speaking. I had incredible opportunities to minister in many different places. Incredible things happened. And then, I went back into a season of part-time work and part-time, or full-time work and part-time ministry, and was traveling on the weekends and at nights. And then in 2006, God relaunched me into full-time ministry again and told me I would never go back to where I was. And it was a whole new journey. A whole new step of faith, and I didn't know exactly how things were going to work out, how things were going to pan out, but I trusted. And I had some experience. I didn't have a lot of experience, and God began to multiply my experience very, very, very quickly, and I thank God for it. But we need to remember that there is a practical side to faith. Noah had to apply faith to believing that God spoke to him, but then he had to actually begin building this ark. And really, when you apply the practical side of faith to faith, that's when real faith kicks in. You could say, I believe God spoke to me by faith. I believe he's given me a blueprint to build an ark. But until you start actually tearing down the trees, chopping down the trees, and building the ark, man, that's when it's like you realize this is going to take over 100 years, which it did. That's a long time. That's a long, long time. And imagine, like, year 60, Noah. I don't even know. See, because he never built an ark before. He had no counsel around him to tell him this is how long it's going to take. And God did not even tell him necessarily how long it was going to take from when he started building the ark to when he'd flood the earth. All he knew is he had to be obedient. And I'm sure he wanted to give up. I'm sure he went a little crazy sometimes. You think so? Over 100 years of building a boat that you've never built before, you have no idea, using gopher wood. I mean, what's gopher wood anyways? They say it's cypress and some, but it's actually gopher wood. And translators can't even find what kind of wood that really is. Some ancient wood or whatever. Gopher wood. Not only do we need to remember the purpose of building trust in a relaunching season, number 2, the purpose of following directions. Genesis 6, verse 19 to 22, bring a pair of every kind of animal, male and female, into the boat with you to keep them alive during the flood. Pairs of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, every kind of small animal that scurries along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. And be sure to take on board enough food for your family and for all the animals. So Noah did everything exactly as God had commanded him. Now, this is written by the account of Moses. We don't know exactly, we're missing details here. There's lots more details. But we don't know, how did Noah even know how much food to bring on the boat? I don't even know how many clothes to bring when I travel. How did Noah know how much food to bring into a situation that he never experienced before? He had no idea what it was going to be like. Not only did he have to trust God, he had to follow every direction. Okay, I'm just going to step out. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to listen to God. Genesis 7, verse 2, take with you 7 pairs, male and female, of each animal. So now, not only is it, people forget this, it's not only a pair of every kind of animal, male and female, into the boat, and every bird, but it's also, verse 2, chapter 7, take with you 7 pairs, male and female, of each animal I have approved for eating and for sacrifice, and take 1 pair of each of the others. Also take 7 pairs of every kind of bird. Now that's a lot of animals. It's not just 2 of every kind. Now it's 7 pairs for sacrifice and for offering. It's crazy. How many animals? Think of the stench on the boat. And guess what? There was 1 door. You know why? There's only one way to the Father. Everything about the ark was a picture of the gospel. Just like after God relaunched the whole entire universe in the wilderness of 40 years. Remember, it rained and flooded the earth 40 days, 40 nights. 40 years in the wilderness, God said, I want you to now build another ark called the Ark of the Covenant. See, and everything since the beginning is a prophetic picture of what would come one day. There would be a man named Jesus who would be the man that changed everything once and for all. We're going to get there in a little bit. Verse 4 of chapter 7, 7 days from now I will make the rains pour down on the earth, and it will rain for 40 days and 40 nights until I have wiped from the earth all living things I have created. Now, this is a big deal. How many have a hard time following instructions? Men should put their hands up. I know Joe shared a story last week about his wife asking him to go into the fridge and look for something. Okay, that happens with me in every area. Go find the diapers. Where are the diapers? They're upstairs. Well, where? Just tell me, are they in the closet or are they by the crib? Are they under the crib or are they in the fridge? Like, where are the diapers? Just give me the directions. I love how women just say, oh, it's in the fridge. Well, where in the fridge? See, if I was to say it, I'm a little vent a little bit. I would say on the third shelf by the milk. But I love it. But women just say, just go find the milk. Go find it. Anyways, we should do a teaching. But no, either way, most men have a hard time hearing or following directions. I don't know, I remember buying IKEA furniture. It's like so simple to build. And I'm like, I want to follow the directions, but I'm like, some of it's obvious. But for some reason, some of what seems obvious ends up being a disaster. And if I just followed the direction, I wouldn't have stripped the screw. Like I remember there was a coffee table that I built one time, and I was so confident. From IKEA, it's so simple. I feel humble even admitting this to you right now. And I was building it, and I totally ruined it, one of the drawers, because I didn't follow the directions. Because I thought it was obvious. And most people in life, at some point in life, have a hard time following directions. But let me just tell you, Moses did not have a hard time following directions. And it was to his benefit. God gave Moses a mandate to save 8 people, including himself, and to save all the animals, and to start over again. What did I say? Moses, Noah. Sorry, I don't know who said that. I'm not sure. Noah, thank you. I have good commentary. Yeah, Moses was cool too. Moses saved people too. He wasn't so good with directions. Yeah. Well, he was okay. He made some mistakes. But Noah had to follow directions or they were all in trouble. They had to build this massive box, and they had to survive a massive flood, and he had to be obedient. There was a purpose in following directions. I remember this story one time where it happens with, like, even when you're driving. How many of you have ever gotten lost before when they're driving somewhere? All the men put their hands up again. No women, eh? Women are just perfect at following directions, not getting lost. I mean, Rob's like, yeah, okay. So I remember my wife one time sent me on an excursion to get some food from this farm. And she had given me the directions. Like, and sometimes, as a man, I don't know, like you ask a question, but then like it's like, it seems like it just slips by. You ever had that before? Like you're hearing it, you're even nodding, but you don't even know you're nodding. And you leave the conversation was like, what did you ask me to do again? Like, where am I going? It's happened many times. Been there, right? Okay. So I remember I was supposed to go get all this food from this farm, and it should have only taken me like 15 minutes to get there. And I remember she gave me the directions, but she handed me a sheet with the address. And so somehow, subconsciously, I decided, without even knowing I decided it, like subconsciously, just decided it without knowing I decided it, that I wasn't going to listen to her directions. I was just going to, when I got in my car, put the address in my GPS. But then, sometimes there's messy handwriting on a piece of paper that is giving you an address, right? So I got into the car and I put an address in, and I was driving around for over an hour, lost. And if I just listened to my wife's directions, because I read the address wrong, I put it into my GPS, and it took me literally to nowhere. And I was so confused because I've been there before many times, actually. I still needed directions. And And I thought to myself, man, Sean, if you just listened to the directions your wife gave you, you would have been fine right now. So men, encouragement to you, listen to your wife's directions, and all things will go well with your life. All things. If she says, find the milk, just open the fridge and just search. And just look, and look, however long it takes, just as long as a happy wife is a happy life, right? From remembering the purpose of building trust in a season of relaunch and following directions, we also must remember, number 3, the purpose of humility and pain. Genesis 7, verse 10 to 16, after 7 days, the waters of the flood came and covered the earth. When Noah was 600 years old, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, all the underground waters erupted from the earth, from the ground up, and the rain fell in muddy torrents from the sky. So you have from above and from beneath. Number 12, verse 12, the rain continued to fall for 40 days and 40 nights. That very day, Noah had gone into the boat with his wife and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. With them in the boat were pairs of every kind of animal, domestic and wild, large and small, along with birds of every kind. And it goes on. It says, verse 16, a male and female of each entered, just as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord closed the door behind them. Very important, remember that. The Lord closed the door behind them. It was the closure of an old season and the beginning of a new season. But I don't think he had any idea of what was about to come. I don't think Moses, it took humility for Moses. Well, I'm on Moses. Maybe Moses was there too, who knows? No. Maybe he's here right now. Yeah. Noah had to have great humility to build something that was going to facilitate a complete wipeout of the entire earth. Because that's a heavy responsibility to carry. Just like, now I mean Moses, just like Moses was considered biblically to be the most humble man that ever walked the earth. Because he had a huge responsibility to lead a whole nation out of captivity. Noah had a responsibility to save 8, but basically allow the rest of humanity to be destroyed. There is pain in that. There is pain in humility. Moses went through pain. Moses went through pain, seeing generations die off, people die off, seeing God come down, and because he was upset at the sin that people were doing and succumbing to, and things had to happen to show people, listen, you guys can't keep doing this. You're going to take out yourselves. And so, Moses as a leader had to suffer the pain that came with the humility of being the leader that God's called him to be. Noah, the same thing. Imagine the screams of the people and the heart of compassion. But yet, one of the definitions of humility really is submission and obedience. What defined Noah as a humble man, or Moses as a humble man, was his obedience to God, to submitting himself to God, even when he wanted to make his own decisions. Because I'm sure Noah, in his compassion and maybe mercy, being what he was, righteous and blameless, saw and heard the screams of the people trying to get into the ark, and yet God shut the door. Noah had to completely trust God with that door that was going to be closed for who knows how long. And he had to go through the pain. And then imagine being on the boat every day and not knowing when the water's going to stop, not knowing when they're going to get off the boat and start over again. Are we going to be on this boat forever? Imagine not knowing. Every day you wake up, it's like a pregnant woman. Every day they get up believing they're going to have the baby today. Doesn't happen. Today, it doesn't happen. The next day, it doesn't happen. After a while, it's like, hope deferred makes the heart sick. You get a little hopeless after a while. Now imagine Moses. He's on this boat for over a year. Oh. I've been in the sun too long. I'm just going to lay down. I've been in the sun way too long. Oh, Lord. Going back to Mexico. This is my retreat right now. I'm relaunching right now. Anyways, so Noah, now I don't know what I was talking about. Noah, yeah, he's on this boat for over a year. That's a long time. That's a painful process to be in, isn't it? That's a painful process to be in. But there was a purpose in the humility and the pain that Noah went through, because God wanted to start all over again. And Noah was going to be the catalyst to facilitate that with all of his family. It says in Genesis 7, verse 21 to 22, all the living things on earth died, birds, domestic animals, wild animals, small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the people, everything that breathed and lived on dry land died. That is a painful thing to experience, and yet be the very person that was obedient to God, humble enough to take on that responsibility. So from remembering the purpose of building trust, following directions, the purpose of humility and pain, we must remember, number 4, my last point, the purpose of walking into the unknown. Walking into the unknown. Genesis 7, verse 24, and the flood waters covered the earth for 150 days. But Noah had to stay on the boat for almost over a year. He didn't get off the boat for a very long time. Genesis 8, verse 1, but God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. It's a good thing, eh? God remembered. It's like, it wouldn't be that hard to remember. The last family on the earth. God remembered. I love that. God remembered. Thank you, God, for remembering me. I've been on this ark. God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the flood waters began to recede, or in some translations, retreat. Verse 14, 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, leave the boat, all of you, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Now imagine this. Imagine this feeling of you're walking into something foreign now. The world you once knew has been dismantled. All the animals, all the people, all the creatures are destroyed, and now the waters finally recede. And Noah and his family come out of the boat. God opens the door. They walk out, and they're walking into the unknown. The way they started the whole process was starting it in trust, just trusting God for what he was doing and saying. And now the way they're ending is the same. They're trusting God again with walking by faith into the unknown. They don't know what they're relaunching into. They don't know what all things are going to look like. They don't know what the world is going to be like when they get off the boat. I don't even think Noah knew what he was really leaving behind until he got off the boat. He didn't know what kind of relationships he would have with his family when he got off the boat. I mean, being on a boat for a year with your family, imagine that scenario. All your family. Close quarters. It's like you get off the boat, you're like, freedom! You're like, Shem, you go way, way over there. Ham, you go way, way, way over there. I mean, it's like they just, freedom. I mean, they don't know. What do you do? You've been confined for over a year. Like, what do you do? They're walking into the unknown. And in verse 1 of chapter 9 of Genesis, then God blessed Noah and his sons and told them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. They were walking into this unknown season, this unknown world, this new creation that God had allowed to happen or allowed to be. And they walk in, and all they're given, all as a command from God, is be fruitful and multiply. The same command that Adam and Eve were given, but kind of botched it a little bit. They were given a new chance. It was a new hope. It was a new beginning. It was a whole new beginning. Noah was called into a season of retreat for over 100 years, building this boat, refocusing, stopping everything that he was doing. Whatever he used to do for 600 years prior. For the next 100 years, he was called to only build this massive ship. so that all of the earth could start over again. And when they got off the boat, you know the story, Noah built an altar and offered up an offering to God, a sacrifice to God, and God loved the sacrifice. And God, as a result, established a covenant with Noah that day and said, I'm never going to flood the earth again. I'm not going to use flood waters to destroy sin and wickedness again. I may use something else. I may send a son. I may send myself. I may send the blood, not of an animal, but the blood of my son, Jesus, to wash away all sin and wickedness. But I'm not going to send a flood, and I'm going to give you a sign in the sky. It's going to be a rainbow with 7 colors in it. Just like I, Isaiah 11, I am the sevenfold Spirit of God. There are 7 spirits. Picture of rest, 7 days. Noah, you're the catalyst to launch this earth into a new state of rest. Noah, you are a picture of the rest that will come one day through Jesus, my son, who will restore all things and relaunch everything for us. Noah, you are a picture of that. You are a picture of that permanent state of rest that one day would take place through my son when he'd come and die on the earth for all mankind. Jesus retreated before he relaunched this entire new reconciliation process for all mankind. A process that would forever sever and cut the line of sin and iniquity that stopped us from having a relationship with our Creator. He retreated, Jesus Christ retreated in the wilderness for 40 days. You can read it in Matthew 4, 40 days, 40 nights. And he retreated into the wilderness, and he was tempted to give up his right as a picture of an end to the 40 years of the wilderness walking of sin and disobedience that the nation of Israel had to go through. Jesus did that for 40 days, 40 nights. He overcame temptation. He overcame the temptation to forfeit the identity as a son when the devil said, if you really are the Son of God, do this. He suffered through 40 days, 40 nights for the 40 years in the wilderness. He retreated into a garden called Gethsemane to suffer a moment of temptation, again, to give up his rights. Because Adam and Eve also gave up their rights in a garden a long time ago in the beginning. The way it began and the way it was about to end, Jesus was ending his retreat season so he could relaunch everything for us, that we could have real relationship with Jesus Christ. He wanted to relaunch a new process, a new place where we could all have relationship with God for the first time. John 19, verse 32 and 34 says this, my last verse. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the 2 men crucified with Jesus. So Jesus is on the cross now. There are 2 people beside him. And the soldiers come, that's what they did in those days, to break his legs. But when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they didn't break his legs. One of the soldiers, however, pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water flowed out. The last thing that came out of Jesus was blood and water. Imagine in the beginning with Noah, when Noah and his family were on the boat. Imagine with all of the death that took place, all the blood and water that was all around them. So imagine that for a second. What took out and destroyed the external, the earth as we know it, and restored everything. What began as a new creation. Jesus would come as a man, Son of God, and right before the new creation, us, being able to have right relationship with God, the last thing that would be poured out of his body would be blood and water. God said, I'm not going to flood the earth in the natural with water again, but I am going to flood all of humanity with the blood and the purifying, cleansing water of the Word that would literally save all of humanity once and for all. I'm going to purify my people. All they have to do is accept it. All they have to do is say yes to me, and all things will change. Noah and his family retreated into an isolated place for a long period of time to be the catalyst for a whole new relaunch of the earth and humanity. God destroyed the world around mankind. Then Jesus came and destroyed the world in mankind. And it was the world of sin and iniquity that the flood of blood and water destroyed so we could have right relationship with God. Why don't you stand up for just a few moments here? I just feel like to end this series officially, it's been an awesome journey, 31 weeks. I feel like God wants us to relaunch into this next season with a new mindset, a fresh mindset, a healthy mindset, a right perspective of where we've came from to where we're going. I want you to close your eyes just for a few moments, and I want you to imagine some of the things that you feel like you're going through right now. Maybe you're in a season where you're relaunching into a brand new space of life. You're relaunching into a new, maybe you're moving, maybe you're changing jobs, maybe you're having a new baby, maybe you're getting married, whatever it may be. Maybe you just bought a house or something. You feel like you're in a season of relaunch, or you feel like you're in a season of stepping out, stepping forward. And I want you to imagine in your mind right now, whatever that thing is that you're relaunching into. And I want you to remember everything we talked about that has been and is being developed from the past season, the trust that's been built in your relationship with God, understanding the value of taking hold of His instructions and His directions, seeing the humility that has come with the last season of retreat for yourself while you're relaunching, seeing the season of pain that you've gone through to get you to where you are right now because God wanted you to be strong for the next season. I want you to see those things in your mind right now. And I want you to see how all those things have led you up to a point right now that even though you don't totally see what you're relaunching into, you're walking by faith and you're launching into what may seem unknown to you. And that's okay, because you can trust God with everything. Trust God with everything. Father, I just pray for every person right now in this room. God, I pray that you rearrange their thinking right now. Rearrange their thinking. God, I pray that you'd open up their heart, open up their mind, open up their perspective to see all the things that you've done in the past season, leading them up to this point. That God, there would be a healthy relaunch in this season. That God, where there's been inactivity in their life, maybe they were in a spiritual hibernation mode in the wintertime, the last season. Maybe they've not had the kind of relationship with God that they've desired, but they knew that they desired to have it, but they just couldn't get it. They just couldn't acquire it. Whatever it may be, God, maybe they didn't have all their ducks in a row. Maybe they didn't have all their stuff ready in the last season, but God, now you've prepared them. God, they're in a new season. They're relaunching into a new season with strength. God, and I pray that from this point, they would feel your encouragement, they would feel your affirmation, and they would feel your support launching out into this new season. That God, you'd make them active in their faith as they walk into the unknown, as they walk into things and areas they don't know how they're gonna pan out, as they walk into areas where maybe new jobs where they don't know how long those new jobs will be, or whatever it may be. God, I pray that you'd give them the strength that they need to continue. I'm just gonna open this front up for anybody that connects to the word that I spoke this morning about relaunch. You feel like you're relaunching. You feel like you understand what we've talked about. You understand the pain, the humility. You understand the importance of following directions. You understand the realities of building trust in relationship in the last season. And now you're at a place where you're walking into the unknown. If that relates to you, I want to invite you just to the front. We're not going to have the ministry team come to the front, but I'm just going to invite everyone to the front right now. That just relates to that word. We're going to pray for you because God wants you to relaunch into this next season with strength, with faith, with boldness, with joy, with perseverance, with endurance. Some of you might feel the power of God come on your body. Some of you might feel just God giving you peace. Some of you might feel like God rearranging some areas of thinking that have kind of defined or determined your last season of life. Anybody who just wants prayer right now, just come to the front. I'm going to officially dismiss the service. If you need to go, we bless you. We'll see you next week, 9 and 11. Remember, doors open at 9, doors open at 11. So the service doesn't start when the band plays. The service starts out there in the lobby, hanging out with people, talking to people. That's when it all starts. Doors open at 9 and 11 next week. But encourage you, get an invitation card at the front. Invite people. Invite your neighbors, co-workers, friends, family. But if you're at the front, I want you to just come as close as you can. If you're at the front here, just come as close as you can. Just begin to close your eyes. Just begin to focus in on Jesus right now. We're going to just declare some words into the atmosphere to God right now that He is worthy of it all. He is worthy of everything. He is worthy of it all, because this is a season where we really have to get that into our frame of thinking, that He is worthy of it all.